accepted his fate. He was expecting it, and that's why they had that book out here. Well, here we are looking at this introduction to King Kill 33, Alchemical Conspiracy and the Death of the West. Now, this is what I was researching today. This idea that the killing of the king ritual of Kennedy, that it was part of a larger series of rituals that has to do with the death of the West. And that's what this whole thing seems to be about. But here's what I found that's new. Trinity, 7/16/1945, where the world's first nuclear device was exploded. Again, the Trinity site. The Manhattan Project, the Trinity test, 7/16/1945. Note the date, 7/16. This was the beginning of the nuclear age. And then you have 7/16 is the date of Apollo 11 launching from Kennedy Space Center. And then 7/16 is also the date of, well, Kennedy Jr. dying and Eyes Wide Shut being released. Now the connection here, these are all connected to the work of Kubrick and his movie magic psyops. If Kubrick is behind Apollo 11, as can be, I think, demonstrated, and the Kennedy assassination, then we might even see what his work has been a part of is part of the same ritual here, all having to do with the beginning of the nuclear age, the space age. The 2001 Space Odyssey is about the transition into the new age. Again, we're looking at movies being used to convey religious drama, mythic dramas, things that are about changing the very zeitgeist. But here's where it gets even more interesting to me is that Christopher Nolan is considered to be the mantle bearer of Kubrick. If you know, this is the counterpart to Kubrick. Christopher Nolan, who's very, very well represented among meta-scripting. Of course, Dark Knight Rises, lots of predictive programming connected to Sandy Hook, to the Boston bombing. You can find COVID stuff. In other words, more of the same. Movies being used for more than just entertainment. We're talking about worldview shaping. Interestingly enough, next year, Christopher Nolan has a movie coming out called Oppenheimer about the Manhattan Project. Again, this is today's Kubrick Manhattan Project. I'm not sure what date it's coming out. I'm going to have to check. It's called Oppenheimer. But that date, 7/16, is not the only significant date that Kubrick has used. Every time something happens with the Kennedys, you can find some kind of Kubrick connection. Dr. Strangelove came out on the day of the Kennedy assassination, 11/22/63. No coincidence that Eyes Wide Shut comes out on the day that JFK Jr. dies. Wonka World says, Apocalypse Now was a fantastic movie. Yeah, I'm going to have to watch it again. G33 says, Pagan Lives Matter. Copacetic says, IPS or bust. No, we are the only off-world stage-based news media network with a think tank actively deconstructing mass media lies real time for our own edification. It's not for entertainment. I think it's to maintain situational awareness. And maybe it's just philosophy, the love of knowing. Here's an interesting piece came out yesterday from science.slash.org. Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He was born on a 3/11, interestingly. Douglas Adams was right. Science Journal proves 42 is the address of the universe. I was talking about the number 42 and the significance of it in this entire occult paradigm that is just thinly disguised. But listen to this. This is again from a science journal. 42 is what defines our universe from any other version of a universe. It also determines the rate of expansion and the ground state orbital of an atom, thus reducing the number of stable universes as we understand them to just a few. So while Douglas Adams may have just been randomly picking numbers when writing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, perhaps we live in a universe that likes to humor itself. Now, the number 42 also figures in Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland, was suggesting that if you were to connect the continents with a tunnel, and then you would just take the air out of the tunnel, you'd have a vacuum, and then you'd have a craft, and you would fall through the earth. How long would it take to go through the earth? And Alice falling down is like kind of like zero G. She just falls down the tunnel. Well, this was the idea, and I think this is all interesting how it's connected to Elon Musk and space travel and the Hyperloop and all that. But there were calculations. How long will it take, or how long would it take to travel through the Earth, to fall through the Earth? Now, the Earth is, assuming it's a ball, 25,000 miles in circumference, and they calculated it down to 42 minutes. How long would it take to fall through the Earth? 42 minutes. Gravity pulls towards the center, so once you reach halfway, anyway, they've done the math. 42 seconds to fall through the Earth. The number 42 is encoded into everything Musk does. Even Bezos has quite a lot. Again, I told you it's about their god of time, the god of death. It's about Saturn worship. In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's the number given to the protagonist by this AI god who is asked, what's the meaning of the universe, or what's the meaning of life? And the number 42 is given as the answer. And it sounds nonsensical, but it might actually make sense if you dig into their symbolic system and what it all actually means. Now, I don't get too deep into their numerology, but I do find that you can kind of intuit what it all means by context. Context is what puts a lot of these things into a way that you can, look, this is significantly, these symbols are always grouped together. What's with the number 33 always being associated with Christ and the burning man and the phoenix? And I think we've come to some pretty accurate conclusions about what these things mean as far as our interpretations. All right, let me go and play this clip. This is Rush Limbaugh, the mayor of Realville, and I referred to him as close as you can be to real on the world stage. I mean, he still accepts all basic world stage assumptions about everything. However, there are times where he's inadvertently auto-hoaxing things. I think in 2009-ish he was saying, NASA discovering water on Mars is probably a hoax. Well, yeah, Mars is a hoax. But sure, water on Mars, hoax, obviously. And he said it was because the Democrats needed money for their environmentalist stuff. It's like, yeah, you're half right. More than half. In the right direction, but you'll never get the truth because you're a world stager. But this is pretty good here. This is Limbaugh, like in 1933, talking about the, quote, current thing.
Because I'm wearing these ribbons, I care more than any of you about anything. And these ribbons say so. I want you people sitting at home and you people in the audience, look down at your lapel right now. I want you to do this. Put the camera back on me. Do this. When you look down, what do you see? You don't see anything because you're not wearing any ribbons. It means you're a bigot. It means you're a racist. It means you're a sexist. It means you're a homophobe. It probably means you're a white guy. It probably means you're a European. And you alone are responsible for all the ills of America. But I'm not, because I'm wearing these ribbons.
And he has a point there. And, it kind of reminds me of ribbon bullies. Remember ribbon bullies? Where Kramer wouldn't wear the AIDS ribbon? And the AIDS marchers like, why aren't you wearing a ribbon? He's like, I don't want to wear a ribbon. They gang up on him. They beat him up. They acted like, why aren't you wearing a mask? The mask Karens. I'm going to play a clip here. This is Kramer won't wear an AIDS ribbon.
No thanks.
You don't want to wear an AIDS ribbon?
No.
But you have to wear an AIDS ribbon.
I have to?
Yes.
Yeah, see, that's why I don't want to.
But everyone wears the ribbon. You must wear the ribbon.
You're a ribbon bully.
You're a ribbon bully. Thank you, Nico Trumis. We at IPS appreciate the support. He says, thanks for all the great information, Tim. Yeah, I say thanks to the think tank. We have hundreds and hundreds of sets of eyes and ears paying attention. And we consolidate all of that information in our Discord servers and on all of our networked blogs and channels. And we do tend to filter the best information, and we pretty much have been cutting edge this entire time. The media thinks we are the fringe, but it's actually kind of the opposite. This is again Kramer not wearing the AIDS ribbon. What a bigot.
Yes.
Yeah, see, that's why I don't want to.
But everyone wears the ribbon. You must wear the ribbon.
What you are? You're a ribbon bully.
Now later, of course, he's marching, and this is 2020. Just replace ribbon for mask.
Hey, where's your ribbon? Oh, I don't wear them.
You don't wear the ribbon? Aren't you against AIDS?
Yeah, I'm against AIDS.
Aren't you against AIDS? That's just the mentality, though. You know, you're not for what I'm for. You must be against it. The basic Jedi mind trick, and it fools most people.
Walking, aren't I? Just don't wear the ribbon.
Who do you think you are?
Put the ribbon on.
Hey, Cedric, Bob, this guy won't wear a ribbon.
Who? Who doesn't want to wear the ribbon?
Anyway, classic. COP27, will God deliver 10 commandments for climate change? I try not to talk about it too often. I think everyone here already knows, but climate change is a modern flood myth. And NASA, NOAA, they've appropriated Old Testament symbology, the dove, the arcs, the angel warning us, only it's a satellite. Your wickedness is going to cause the flood. The modern flood myth with our NOAAs being the scientists. But listen to this. And of course, the angry globe is the new god. And he's heating up. He's so mad at you. Or she. I mean, what is it? You know, Gaia, which is the name of the Earth God, and also the global AI initiative that the World Economic Forum 666 is getting behind. You know, AI to augment or replace government.
Walking down Duke Street, what did I see? A little plaque upon a door beckoning me. I had a little read of it to see what it could be. It said this is the court of the 35th degree. I was taken aback, a little suddenly, as I looked askance at this door in front of me. Yes, there was a plaque clearly stating it to be the Supreme Court of the 35th degree. 35th degree. 35th degree. I sat my days upon a hill. I sat and gazed across until I saw the most amazing thing. The sun and moon are closing in, and all the people carried on down below. Just because they don't know just what's really happening. The sun and moon are closing in.
All right, it's 6:30 p.m., 11/16/2022. This is the 33rd degree, Lucifer Tim. Hope you're all wearing your AIDS ribbons. I'll be right back. Okay, phones are open. A minute ago, the reference, of course, is to the previous hour. If you were listening to the 24/7 stream, it was a clip from Seinfeld where Kramer was being bullied for not wearing an AIDS ribbon at an AIDS march. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Aren't you against AIDS? Why aren't you wearing a ribbon? Just showing how far back in time virtue signaling actually goes. In fact, Limbaugh called it out in the early 90s, this whole idea of virtue signaling, which was actually adopted by the right after 9/11 with the Let's Roll American Flag bumper stickers. And of course, 2020, we all know how you signaled then. It was either the vaxie, which is the selfie while you're getting the pokey, the mask, of course, the signaling that you're compliant and that you're virtuous because of it. All right, let's go through some comments. Lots of people here tonight. Look, I have, thanks to P Trippa 103, a couple of upgrades. We have actually added several channels. Basically, we're on, I think, eight more in total than usual. We're also back on most of the podcasting platforms, but you'll notice a spike in numbers tonight, I'm pretty sure. And one of the channels, like the one, yeah, Travis Claude, you're on it, has 911 subs. And also, I merged a few things. I'm working with automation quite a bit, and all of the podcasts will automatically show up on these YouTube channels, as you'll start seeing. Echo Charlie says, off-world sounds like space colony. Well, I refer to the perspective we take as an off-world stage media perspective, off-world stage, which is very, I think, appropriate, as you'll see. All right, joined by AAAA. Josh P says, is his channel going live soon? D Live wouldn't stop buffering. Yeah, if you're on D Live, it's infiniteplane.radio, but go to ips.monster. That's the hub, and you can find all the channels that we're on. Yes, we are live and in color. Joined by Wee737, Auto Hoaxer, Osher, and Linda Curtis. Okay, Rocco Calzone, 3:30 Hawaii time. Nice. If you want to call in, 833-311-1984. Phones are open. Portal Complex and Benton and Venus E and Cubstar have arrived. Okay, I think we have a full cult here. It's like a coven, but with a cult, you got to have 33 people to get started. All right, if you're looking at the screen there, break-in Ukrainian soldier who fired the missile into Poland identified. Yeah, that was a big nothing burger. It went from World War III, Russia shot some NATO territory, they shot Ukraine to, no, Ukraine did it. It was a foot bullet, like a literal foot bullet. Obviously fake, but I think what happened is they want to test it. Let's throw this story out there and see if the world's triggered by it. And if they're triggered enough, boom, World War III. But if they don't care because they're too distracted by Kanye West or Donald Trump, it's going to fizzle out. And I think this was an attempt to jumpstart World War III, and they quietly put it back into the back burner just until we're sufficiently triggerable again. I've been wondering, what's going to put an end to Kanye? Is it going to be the actual World War III kicking off? Also, for everyone here who's afraid of chemtrails, you're going to breathe easier now and sleep easier too. I believe I have solved chemtrails. I was staring at the Sandia Mountains today, and at the top you can see clouds where they make fake snow. And the more I looked at it, the more I was thinking, you know what? There's got to be some connection here between the process by which they make this fake snow and these so-called condensation trails. And we're talking about a mountain peak. And I think the official explanation for condensation trails makes more sense having looked and considered this. Let me go ahead and go to the first exhibit. Snow-making machines, or snow guns, shoot a stream of water blown by a fan or spray a combination of compressed air and water into the air. The droplets evaporate, which cool the air around it enough to freeze other water droplets. Now let's go ahead to...
If we relied only on natural snow, some resorts wouldn't be able to open at all, and others wouldn't be able to run their base areas. But thankfully, we've got snowmaking. Let's see how it works.
Now on this video, he goes to the various snowmaking techniques, but essentially, it boils down to this.
Input, water. Instead of compressed air, this one uses an electric fan to blow the stream of water into tiny drops that freeze and fall to the ground. This is called an airless snow gun and has the benefit of not requiring a hose for compressed air, but it does require an electrical connection to run the fan.
Now, we're talking about snowmaking machines. Next, we're going to consider this. Contrails form behind a jet engine in the expanding exhaust plume. The trail will form if the exhaust gas is cool and mix with the surrounding air. The humidity becomes high enough or the air temperature low enough for liquid condensation to occur. Now again, I'm suggesting that the official explanation for the trails makes a lot more sense. Let me go ahead and play a clip from this video here. This is by VAM Physics and Engineering.
If we take the mass of water and divide by the mass of the jet,
and he's pointing out that there's 1.37 times more water in the jet fuel than
in water. I did a quick volumetric calculation to find that for every 1 liter or gallon of jet fuel burnt, you get 1.123 liters or gallons of water. There is a greater mass of water than jet fuel because the jet fuel is reacting with oxygen.
Basically, what he's talking about here is the amount of water going through. It's very much analogous to the snowmaking machine. Now, next, he goes outside with near boiling water and he throws it out into the freezing air and watch what happens.
Whole day, it instantly turns to ice. Let's play it again, but this time in slow motion. You can see that when the water is thrown, there is a condensation trail behind it. Similarly, when the jet engine is pumping out all that hot water, it is quickly turning to ice. Looking at these videos of aircraft taken on the same day.
Now, this is important because we're just talking about the different altitudes. And I was looking at the peak, the Sandia Peak, looking at the man-made snow machines creating the cloud coverage on top, and I thought, there's got to be some connection here, and I think this is it.
We see that the lower flying aircraft does not have the trails, but the aircraft that is higher in elevation does. This must be because when you go higher in elevation, it gets colder. You can visually see this if you are in a mountainous area. At the top of the mountains, many times they will have snow due to the colder temperatures at high elevations. Now let's think for a moment about how clouds form.
Now, that's pretty much all I wanted to do. I just wanted to compare the snow-making machines to the explanation for the creation of condensation trails, and I'm suggesting that it's pretty much the same thing. And if you're worried about chemtrails, I think you can pretty much put that to rest. A few other things. Yesterday, Donald Trump announced that he's going to run for office in 2024, and hopefully they can finally get around to saving those children. Remember QAnon Save the Children 2016, Fight the Deep State? It's going to be, 8 years? Those children are all going to be, old enough to vote. Maybe he might even get them to vote for him in 2024, like Save Us, Donald Trump. We're almost 18. We're going to get out of the tunnels. That was the story the QAnoners said, that they were Democrats trafficking children in the tunnels below America. Trump also promised to plant the American flag on Mars if he's elected in 2024, and he vows to build a defense shield. Now, the defense shield sounds quite a lot like Trackdown. Trackdown was the American television series where in one particular episode they had a character named Trump. And this 1958 episode with Trump was about a charlatan who was selling the locals on the need for a cosmic wall, a cosmic defense shield. Kind of echoing, or rather Trump echoed that with his build the wall, against illegal aliens, of course, not alien aliens, cosmic threats. But again, here, take a look. This is...
I am the only one. Trust me. I can build a wall around your homes.
He even sounds like Donald Trump. And again, this is 1958.
I can build a wall around your homes that nothing will penetrate. You're a liar, Trump.
An episode of the TV Western Trackdown recently resurfaced which tells the story of a conman named Trump, who warns the people that only he can save them from a cosmic threat by building a wall. And of course,
I alone can fix it.
the episode was titled The End of the World. Again, that came out in 1958. Very interesting if you want to get into it. That has some connections to a Quantum Leap episode, which is dated the day after this episode, 1958. A lot of time travel connections around Donald Trump, and I was doing a bit of research in that regard today. Okay, if you want to call right back, caller, NSA has to patch in. But anyway, Trackdown. Donald Trump building a wall was kind of the theme there. And here we have Trump promising to build a defense shield if we elect him. And he'll plant a flag on Mars. By the way, they did launch Artemis, the Artemis mission. The missiles, the rocket was called Orion. And Orion is the same thing, same character as Osiris to the Egyptians. Daniel Moore says chemtrails last all day. Infinite Plane Radio.
Oh, cool. Hey.
Hey, what's
Hi,
up?
good evening.
Well, what do you think of my explanation for chemtrails?
You've done it. The argument is over. That was great, man. Yeah, I think it makes absolute sense. And yeah.
I think it does, unless the chemtrail proponents are going to separate what we're talking about, as in the trails that we all see, from what they're talking about, which is what they usually do. They'll say, we're talking about the other ones that these secret drones put up. But we'll see, we'll see. I think this does lend credence to the official explanation,
They're
which
not
makes
going to give up their argument, dude. People are way too attached to that shit. So I
they are.
agree with you. And yeah, so they're just, it's like the whole, all of the divisive stuff that's going on right now. They are just so wound up about all of it that you can't. I mean, you can present your case, but makes sense to me.
Well, I actually believe that the whole Psy-War is about fear for the most part. And
Absolutely. Yes.
the
And control,
left,
yeah, control through fear. Yes.
well, the left wing is trained to fear global warming. They're trained to fear the sky falling. And the right is taught to scoff at that, but they are given alternative fears like geoengineering, HARP, and chemtrails. And maybe there is something to the HARP thing, but conflating the chemtrail theory with geoengineering is kind of a dodge for the fact that they don't have specific information. But anyway, fear the sky seems to be the template here.
A lot of it's a dodge, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. And
Oh, all right. What?
but I was gonna say,
What were you
yeah.
gonna say?
So, but Trump planting a flag on Mars, I guess that means that he's, I guess, not a flat earther for sure. He believes in Mars travel. Did you have any thoughts about his announcement that he's going to run again?
I think he's going to say whatever he needs to get the most possible people behind him. Period.
Yeah, that's probably right. That's probably right. But anyway, what else was on your mind this evening?
So I just wanted to put out, what do you guys think about Carrie Lake as Trump's vice president?
I kind of
What a pair!
wait, reality TV star, and wasn't she a news reader?
She was a news anchor for 27 years, and she's like freaking jumping around saying it's all lies. I was a teleprompter reader. It's all bullshit.
I saw that
Yeah,
commercial
she's
she
just,
did, and I liked it.
yeah, wasn't that great?
I mean, I know it's
Taking over
mostly,
televisions, freaking sledgehammer on television. That was so that was very well done.
and she did
She knows.
speak something as an insider, and I don't really fall for, or rather fall behind lockstep, any sort of leader that they throw out there. However, it is interesting to hear from people who have some inside views. That's why I originally thought David Icke was interesting, because he was part of the Green Party and he was on the inside, and he realized the whole thing was based on fraud, scientific fraud, and she seems to have that same kind of angle.
What inside was David Icke in science? What
Well,
was his inside?
well, he was in politics. He started off, I think, with soccer, and then he had some kind of arthritis, and then he became a television announcer. But he was known for, let me see if I can bring up the actual years he was in. Okay, here we go. He was in the Green Party. Why did they ban him?
Oh, okay, all right. So so that's his inside is politics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who else we have on the inside who's coming out right now is Kanye. Look at the shit that he's saying.
What do you think about that? He's saying his mother was killed as a sacrifice, and that he's not compromised, everyone else is. Very
All
compelling
right.
story for sure.
It's very compelling, yes. All right, so I've been thinking about this because that's all, that's a lot of what we talk about. Whether it's real or not, it's ritual sacrifice at certain times of year to appease the gods or whatever the hell they're doing. So, yeah, and here he is saying ritual sacrifice in Hollywood. So, all right, and so I wanted to put out, you guys, we are prescient. We are seeing what's going on. So there's a couple of levels, and this was something that Lickety Split pointed out from his magic book, was that psyops had two or multiple purposes, of course. And what occurred to me is that with Kanye, all right, so let me finish this first part. So they're putting out psyops. The dupes get it on a certain level. The analytically minded get it on another level. And so part of what he was talking about as the magic of psyops was distracting the analytically minded people, who would be the people that are the most threat to the elite. So with this Kanye thing, if it's real or not, are they throwing us a bone? Is this something for us to kind of chase after and be distracted by something else?
Well, one thing about him, he definitely sounds like someone who is heavily handled. And he expressed real shock at finding out that the personal trainer, the handler, was some kind of Canadian agent who was more or less threatening him with zombification with medicine if he didn't comply. And that's interesting to think. And he said that many celebrities are in the same position of being
That's what I would
handled,
think.
and that a lot of people
Yeah,
turn up
I
dead,
think
is
this
what he
is
said.
part of the course. This is what's going on there.
It's very culty, and again, I don't think we can overstate the importance of him being born, into the cult, more or less. If you look at his family, his
Yeah.
dad with the Black Panthers, I think with even Pete Davidson, the fact that his dad died on 9/11 in one of the Twin Towers, all these characters, Kim Kardashian connected to the O.J. Simpson thing, the Kardashians, reality TV. If you look at how all these things overlap, they're all in the cult.
Yeah, to certain degrees. And there's some higher and lower, of course. Um,
But
and then you have
specifically in
people that,
Kanye, I'm really open to the possibility that he's not like 100% inside, like maybe not a full-on initiate. And isn't that what he was suggesting?
yes, yes. And this is, if it's families, probably, I don't know, they must have ties with Hollywood that are, that go back. I don't, it's because you have all of these moms all of a sudden of certain people turning up to be, Crowley followers and things like that. And so this is the cult inside circle. And if they're in Hollywood or they're famous, like, Kanye's right up at the top there, man. So, and he's saying this stuff, which is basically fulfilling what a lot of us really think is going on there. So this is really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Now I'm looking at it as none of it seems accidental, whatever he's saying, and that's why I'm inclined to think it's all scripted reality TV. I find his role on the world stage is very interesting. His connections, of course, not only to the reality TV world and fashion. I mean, think about the role of fashion. Like, could 2020 have been enforced without the fashion statement that I was talking about a moment ago? Without PPE? If you think of it as fashion and not a medical device, they use that to impose, I think, the idea that the collective was changing this way, and then, of course, it's group coercion. Everybody's doing it. And I think it's fascinating that he's part of
Exactly,
fashion.
and they're doing that on multiple levels because these guys have it figured out. They have human psychology and the very intricate workings of the human mind for NPCs for the most part figured out, and for the more analytical people too. That's why I think some of this stuff. And what occurred to me too, Tim, is if Kanye is really coming out, if this is all real true, and the story is real enough, that ritual he did, where he was spinning around and the crowd was like going in another direction around, like that Black Cube ceremony in the Middle East, he might have been doing a protection for himself, some kind of a protection ritual.
Fascinating.
You think about it, man. With all those people, and maybe just the ones on the very inside circle knew what to be focusing on and putting their collective consciousness into creating.
Have you seen Rosemary's Baby? Or I'm sure you've seen Devil's Advocate, because I get the feeling that he's like the spouse that's not in the club, and the spouse is, and like I'm pretty sure that Kim Kardashian is some kind of witch, in some sense, that she's an insider. If anybody's drinking
Totally makes
adrenochrome, it's
sense.
got to be her, not him. He seems to be something of an outsider. And after his interview with Tucker Carlson, he described his experience as analogous or similar to that of Truman in the Truman Show, about how
Yeah.
handled and everybody's being handled like Truman in
Yep.
some sense. That's what all
Oh,
this
that's
guard
yeah.
railing gatekeeper
Yeah.
are all being handled. But
Totally, man.
but he, being a celebrity and being such a magnate in the realm of fashion and music, I think is more handled than any of us. Just like a president or any sort of high up politician, they'd be insulated out of necessity. And perhaps he's running against those bars.
He is. That totally makes so much sense. I think you are totally right on because he had, getting together with Kim, he had to be indoctrinated into the group, and he turned turned the other way
Now
for the
he may
moment.
be a sacrifice or something. Like, look, like if he's legit and he's not totally a script reader like O.J. Simpson, I suspect would be. Maybe he is. And I've been connecting this story of Kanye West with this James Shelby Downward's alchemical conspiracy and the death of the West. And I think what we're seeing, and I think it all ties in to the return of Pluto and Dawn Day 2 and Kanye's ritual there. I think we're seeing something playing out, and it's personified in the person of Kanye West. And it has to do, I think, quite a lot with this helter skelter narrative put forth by Charles Manson. It's just this ongoing observation I've made of this correlation between his life and the way it's been described in the mass media and the way the West has been chastised both by Putin's brain calling us the Antichrist West, and then Greta Thunberg saying we need to overthrow the West.
Yeah, I was just thinking of something about Kanye. Kind of slipped out of my head. Um,
But, well, okay, let's say hypothetically I'm right here, because look, he did do a song called Black Skinhead with Marilyn Manson sampled. And then his other song with Manson was called Jail. And just from that, combined with White Lives Matter and his suggestion that
yeah.
George Floyd was killed by
Well, he's not
fentanyl.
obviously he's not afraid to push the envelope. If he's right, if this is real, he is courageous and he's not taking any shit. What I was thinking is that what we've really been lacking in a lot of stuff is insider whistleblowers. And between Carrie Lake coming out and him, and I don't know who else, insiders saying what we have imagined and kind of been saying amongst ourselves what hasn't been accepted by the general populace. We're missing whistleblowers, man, because I think that whistleblowers have been taken out in the past very easily, as we've seen. But maybe the whistleblowers are starting to understand the magic that's involved. And I think integrity has something to do with it too, with keeping people safe on a certain level. But that's a magic in itself in a way, I guess.
Well, in 2016, which seems so long ago now, Trump was talking about the fake news and opening the libel laws to sue the media, and people described him as a reformer. And I thought, okay, is this going to precipitate the unmasking of what mass media has become and what it's always been? Are we overthrowing this world state church, this de facto state, this church of state that has just surreptitiously become a part of all of our lives? And I had high hopes for that for a minute. But then the term fake news just kind of went away from calling out the fakery, and now it just became a partisan slur. You see these efforts, but it always gets absorbed, it seems.
Well, but you got to remember too, when something has been inured and established for as long as this blue blood group has been, then you're going to have several different tries on big levels. Like it's not just going to be a Trump; it's going to be a succession of Trumps. Because it doesn't get taken down all at once, man. It gets chipped away just like they've been chipping away at us. We need to chip back.
Yeah, that's a good point because since 2012, the event in Connecticut, they have not been able to put the crisis actor thing back in the bag. And whatever people think about it, it's a fact that you do have mass casualty drills passed off as real quite frequently. And that was a paradigm shift for pretty much anybody in the so-called truth movement, people analytically criticizing the news or at least looking at it as though, yeah, like we are, what they call conspiracy theory. But to me, that was a major upgrade to our approach at
It
looking at
is, and
things. It was an insight.
that's what we're going to see. Yeah, that's what we'll see. There's going to be, two steps forward, one step back. And these ideas, because of the analytical, naughty people that like to color outside the lines, they enter the mass psyche slowly. So they get absorbed, and it's painstakingly slow. But we know how to have fun in the meantime, so it's all good.
Right. Well, I tend to, sometimes I wonder, like, are they holding back because so many of us are watching now? Like, for example, a couple of years ago, you had that bombing in Nashville where the guy in the RV, AQ Warner was his name, he blew up the RV and there were like no deaths aside from him, and they found his passport. My point is, in an event like that, you would expect there to be casualties everywhere, like a Boston bombing. And I've been wondering, maybe as a result of so many people watching and looking out and noticing what they actually are, they're pulling back on a lot of the spectacle. I mean, I'd hate to think we ruined the movie, and they're not going to give us UFOs and nukes, but
Only going to get better, dude. Come on.
then I remember that the masses will believe anything and they don't know what's real or fake unless it's told to them. I mean, there was a video circulating on YouTube of a meteor punching through the clouds, crashing in the ocean, and then you have this big, like, mushroom cloud of water, a mushroom spout of water. It's just like, okay, it looks like this big rock fell from the sky. It took me 2 seconds to recognize it was CGI, but there are scientists sharing that. Like, what does that say about
Oh,
them?
really?
Yeah, scientists. Like, look,
Well, what does it say? We've already seen the salami, man. That topped it all. It's like everything's a clown show from now, Come on.
yeah, exactly. They're like, take that, flat earthers, or take that, skeptics. And it's like, what? That's same thing with you. Les Luthor pointed this out. More than 13,000 of the most popular videos on TikTok having to do with Ukraine and Russia were all footage sourced from video games. That like most, pretty much all of the trending videos were from simulations and games. And I looked at some of them and I'm like, wow, it took me a minute to see that it was fake. I mean, it's just the technology is getting so good, sophisticated, that if you're not perceptive, I can see how you could just slip into their alternative reality quite easily.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. It's hard to say. I think the more the older people leave the planet, the more the lighter the load in a way, psychically. So I don't know. I would hope that kids growing up with that stuff are going to be able to discern what is and isn't. But like you said, they're getting so good you can't really tell. And you watch a good movie, you can't tell that cop car didn't just flip over, and you can't. It's all super real now. So
Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be alive in terms of watching what's going to happen next. Are we going into a dark age? Or like, I'm thinking the future is Ready Player One, high tech, but kind of sprawling, dystopic in many ways. Like, in other words, people will be distracted, but not with drugs from the poverty of their existence, but from the simulation where reality actually matters. We're all going to be avatars. I think that's the idea. And I have a few. I think
yeah,
that's
of course, that's what they want. That's the wet dream. But I really don't think they're. Of course, they're going to get a certain percentage. But I mean, if you look at like vinyl is coming back, people actually realize, and anybody that had records and played vinyl know the difference of the sound between an analog and a digital sine wave. It's obvious.
yes.
And,
I've been told that by
so,
a lot of
so I think
musicians.
young people, yeah. So, dude, these kids that know how to use their mom's phone when they're 3 years old, they might just decide that they want to try something different.
Maybe, or they might be the ones who are addicted to the vax of the week. But we'll see. We'll see. To me, there's a war on perception. They don't want perceivers, they want believers. There's a big difference between people who believe what they've been told and they don't have access to the wrong answers or designated wrong,
Mm.
and those who know the difference. Like we're media Gnostics. I think it like the Gnostics were the ones who were killed off because they recognized they knew too much
In the
about.
past, yes, in the past. But I think that, I don't know, dude, I'm feeling like I have enough magic to put a bubble around myself.
Oh yeah, I
So
don't.
you sound invincible. I mean, the way that you talk is really great. That's one of the things I appreciate about you, is
There's a
that you're
video
just
of
like, I don't have a problem.
there was a video of me speaking at a city council where I was calling the space station fake, and somebody put it on TikTok, and someone like, "Hey, look, you're going viral." And I looked at it, and I went to the comments, and there were people saying, "Has this guy been Hillaried? Has he been suicided with 5 bullets to his head? Is he still alive?" And I forgot. I'm like, "Oh, people actually think that you get killed for pointing out the
Right?
obvious."
Right? Uh-huh. Because that is how it was back in the day. But, man, things have changed.
Well, do you know what the penal codes
That's
are
what I'll...
within the Masonic Lodge?
What's that now?
The penal code within the fraternities, the Masonic Lodge, they have the hand across the neck, and it just basically means if you spill the secrets, you get killed. They don't enact those anymore, I guess, but the whole point of it was, yeah, you had levels of secrecy, and if you spilled the secrets, you would be killed. And the central character in the Masonic myth is the architect of King Solomon's temples who refuses to divulge the secrets, and that's why he's killed. They enshrine him as a martyr and as an ideal because he took the secrets to his grave and he was worthy of being resurrected. And that the idea here is about, protecting the sacred knowledge from the profane.
Yeah, well, it's time for the dissemination of knowledge. And I think a lot of us, we've have enough trails and enough rule breakers that have preceded us, that have put out the information, and we just know how to find it. We track it down and we find it, and it just keeps getting better in a way from my viewpoint. As long as people are willing to open their eyes and look around and start questioning what's going on, because things don't make sense. And that's part of what the one of the things I see the elite really working for, besides fear, is to keep people constantly stressed out and exhausted. That's why it's why we still change the goddamn clocks. That's part of that, I think. And keep raising the prices and make it almost impossible for people to live, so that they have to scramble and work constantly just to keep their heads above water and to keep a roof over their head. You're not going to have time to question anything if that's where you're at. And that's where, you could say there's no answer to that, there's no way out. But if people want to look outside their box and start realizing that they can take control of their reality and creating what they want, own their power.
Well, I think
But that's the leap.
people definitely dilute their time by being current thingers. And current thinking, obsessing over whatever the current issue is a bipartisan thing. They both do it. And I noticed that the current thing tends to move on. I'm like, wait, didn't you care about this? And now you've moved on to that. That's a lot of things to care about, but it's only one at a time, like shiny new objects, kind of like Musk. One minute it's Mars, the next minute it's Twitter. But, at no point are people recognizing that they're just trading in one current fear or obsession or hope of the day for the next thing. And it reminds me of this meme I saw of, it was like NPCs, it was like a chicken meme. Let me see if I can find it, but it was just suggesting that intelligence agencies just drop a lot of things to keep people distracted. Like they call it truth or chicken feed.
That's and they're and of course they're working on multiple levels all at once. So people are really going to have to get slapped in the face and get what happens is when people bottom out and things can't get any worse, that's when people tend to wake up and start actually taking charge of their life, or they kill themselves or something.
Well, there needs to be a QAnon Anonymous for people who need to be out processed from that, because if that goes away, they're going to have a lot of vacuity in their lives, and we'll see. But anyway, lots of interesting things to talk about tonight. I'm not sure if you saw this, but it turns out Stanley Kubrick's
Yeah.
daughter. I wanted to get into that one. Have you heard about this?
Oh, yes. I know. Yeah, I want to hear more about that.
She's a
Hey, I just want to put
Scientologist.
one more thought out to you before we're finished.
Uh-huh.
Is it feels to me like where we're at and what we're doing and what is happening with people kind of coming out and backing up the crazy stories that we've all been talking about is it feels to me like we're on the cusp of a breakthrough. And maybe I've felt that way for a long time, but it just seems like it's, and what was it? Oh, Exalt today in Discord said something about 2022 being a year of revelation. So it kind of seems like it's been that on a certain level anyway. And I felt like we've done some breaking through and starting to round out the story in a way that we understand it and go deeper into it. So appreciate everybody.
Yeah, same. And I think you're right, though. I think you're right. I mean, if we didn't have a point, they wouldn't have broken YouTube in 2018. They wouldn't have shut
Oh,
down
hell yeah.
people talking about ridiculous things, But anyway, I
Yeah, hell
appreciate the
yeah,
call
dude.
very
Yeah.
much, and call back
Okay.
anytime. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks. And have a good one. Bye.
Diana South says, deprogrammed through QAnon Anonymous. Hi, I'm Don, and I'm a Cubaholic. Hi, Don. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. A lot of lost sheep. Now, the QAnoners were a little miffed that Trump decided to run in 2024 because it sort of means that he conceded on 2020. But the way of coping is saying it's all just a movie. Oh, it's all just a movie. We're watching a movie. Just eat your popcorn. Like that just sounds like copium. Copium and hopium. They take the hopium and they chase the hopium, and when they're disappointed, they go for the copium. Maybe Trump's going to start a third party and bring out JFK Jr. and Michael Jackson and Princess Diana. Never pans out. Never pans out, but maybe in 2 more weeks. A couple of things here. Stanley Kubrick's daughter on InfoWars. That was one. And then two, it turns out she's a Scientologist. Now, why does this matter? It matters because Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing. It matters because Stanley Kubrick directed Eyes Wide Shut, starring the Jesus Christ of Scientology, Tom Cruise. The Scientology connection to fake space is very important. Think JPL, Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, Marjorie Cameron, movie star. Movie star, science fiction, black magic equals space religion. And here you have Katharina Kubrick, stepdaughter of Stanley Kubrick, and she is a Scientologist. I also happen to think that Scientology is not it's not just a cult. I actually believe, and I can explain this in detail, but the Church of Scientology is built on the pandemic model. Only instead of a virus, they have something called an engram. It's passed the same way through contact. You're cured the same way, quarantine and getting cleared. It is analogous to the virus, and everybody's assumed to be infected unless they've been cleared. That's why they want to test you. Their objective is to clear the world. And if the world doesn't get cleared, it can always come back, the engrams. Engrams are little, you could call them like knots on your timeline, but they're basically bits of trauma recorded in the back of your mind. And that until you've gone back and therapeutically removed them, you will never reach your full potential. Your spirit, your soul will always be somewhat dragged down, and then you become a drag. You become a suppressive person. In other words, a super spreader. You're infected. You have engrams. All right, let's see here. Going through comments. We're locked at 911 subs on YouTube. Excellent. By the way, if any of you are on social media and you want to share it, like for example, if you're on Twitter, TikTok, Substack, and you want me to source that for information, or if you want me to share the links, post it on myminds.com. I'm trying to create a hub, not just of video, but also of bloggers. For example, Lloyd Miller, who was recently kicked off a Discord for his opinions about a certain medical procedure, has moved on to Substack, where we still have an ongoing dialogue. All right, here we go. The Kubricks' famously private family are ready to break their silence about Vivian, who stopped communicating with her family after joining Scientology a decade ago. This is part of disconnection. Disconnection is quarantine. Disconnection is, I went into a church Scientology and I took courses there. I studied a lot of different groups just to understand what they were about, and that's what I'm saying. I remember learning about this, and they were saying, you might be cleared. Maybe you think there's nothing wrong with you, but maybe there's something wrong with your spouse. And if they're not going to come to church, it means they're fighting progress. They're fighting your progress, and until they've been cleared, you can't be. You will never be. And if you won't be, we won't be, because we're letting you in our church. You're dragging us down. You're going to have to choose us or them. That's the culty nature of it in a nutshell. No different than the cult of the Covidians. Same thing. Oh, you can't come in our house because we're locked down and you went on spring break and you're a super spreader and you're not cleared. Cleared is a term that you would use. It's very much like decontamination of a biological or even a chemical agent. These are analogous systems. It's about not sanitation, this idea of clearing, but it's analogous, and I think like religion, it's about religious purity. I would even go so far as to say that the WHO waged a holy war, an ideological war, with a new updated concept of sin, something they could diagnose with or rather show you with a microscope, or at least pretend to. And that's what the virus is. The virus, the engram, sin, these are all constructs used by the priest to regulate and purify their sheeple and divide them according to the saved and the unsaved. Joined here by Druth says, well, good to see Fepe. It's been a while. Is the earth still flat? Has anyone hit the dome? I'm still curious about the domers. Do they contend that the dome is curved? What's the curvature? Or is the dome flat? If the dome is flat, it's not a dome. Always had a problem with the dome. Chris Harlan says Owen was CIA. Well, I'm not sure about that. I haven't heard that. Wouldn't shock me. All right, let's see here. Yeah, Druth is probably someone from one of the old YouTube channels. Look, I've been trying my best to get all of the previous Infinite Plane Society subs onto one channel. And if you didn't know, YouTube now has handles. At Infinite Plane Society, that's our handle. That channel is nothing but me rambling about safe topics and drawing pictures. And I'm doing this because I need a channel on YouTube that never goes down. Every other channel goes down. You hit 100 subs, they take it out. You hit 1,000, for sure they'll take it out. This one will not have that ceiling. There will be no glass ceiling here. We're going to go up to, hopefully back to where we were before they really started clamping down. We were approaching 10, 11,000. Okay, we're talking about Scientology, and I'm just telling you, or my theory, that Scientology is based on the pandemic remediation model, assuming that we're starting off in a pandemic. You ever wonder why you sense that they're culty and cliquish? It's because they're already in a state of a pandemic, and they are already curing themselves actively and attempting to safeguard their clique against any sort of super spreaders. This is why they have their underground bases and their big boats, their sea orgs. We're talking about a vessel of the purest of the pure. And if you recall back in 2021 in the spring, you had that volcano erupting at the St. Vincent Island, and it hadn't erupted since 1979. It was like 42 years later. Around that week, Joe Rogan had 42 of the tracks from his Spotify pulled. That was, again, kind of at the time they were starting to crack down on unapproved mind viruses on Spotify. But when the volcano was erupting, I remember reading the news articles, and they were saying only the people who are vaxxed can get onto the ships, on the cruise ships. Now think about this, the Scientology, the Sea Org, the boat for the pure. You couldn't get off the island. There's lava pouring out of the volcanoes. And you can't get on the boat with your family if you didn't get the vax. It's basically lake of fire for the unsaved. And you're better off getting saved in case there's a judgment day type situation, because then you can get onto the escape craft. You can be raptured. Now, I think that was fake. I think the volcano eruption is mostly fireworks and TV. I think it was probably fake. And I think they did it for the perception management stunt where you get to see in a microcosm the dilemma that we're all actually facing. 737 says, I'll give my in-laws to the penguin god today. You know, I considered doing a Bohemian Grove type thing if we can get some land. Only instead of a 40-foot owl, it'll be a 40-foot penguin, maybe a 33-foot penguin. I was talking to an artist who could actually probably make one happen out in Santa Fe where they do a Burning Man every year. Celestial Wonder says, who the heck wants to go on a cruise ship? Do you remember the cruise ships at the beginning of the pandemic, how you had one person sick and they couldn't land? That was a psyop as well. The whole point of that was to tell us, look, everybody has to go with the program. Everybody gets saved. Everybody gets vaxxed. Everybody gets their engrams removed, or we're all going to die. We're a closed system, just like the globe. And the Scientologists actually refer to the Earth as Spaceship Earth. Hey, this is Spaceship Earth. It's a zero-sum game. One person's gain is another person's loss. One person polluting damages someone else's life. Everybody affects everybody. You can't be an individual. You must join the hive. And to me, that's what this is ultimately about. Why is Stanley Kubrick's daughter on InfoWars with a headlamp and a GoPro? Now here we have it. This is just Alex Jones and Vivian Kubrick. My only point in bringing this up is the significance from a mind map perspective of connecting Kubrick, Alex Jones, and Scientology in the same picture. We'll get more into that later, just more points to put on our growing mind map. All right, let us continue. I watched a pretty long video today, and this was by a YouTube channel. I highly recommend it, called Shaking My Head Productions. You can go to shakingmyheadproductions.com. He did an hour-long compilation of Donald Trump predictive programming, and it is 100% the case that everything about Donald Trump is connected also to the Twin Towers and this idea of twins. And it's very extensive. It's undeniable. The connections are such that it almost, look, there's something else that I found fascinating, and I'm going to probably go through a few images that I screen capped, but one of them was, he was talking about the Twin Towers representing the twin pillars of the Masonic temple, the black and the white, Jacob and Boaz, and that these pillars are the twins, but that between the pillars you see the letter G in the Masonic Lodge, which they say stands for God. It could stand for a lot of things, but the main thing is G is 7, as in the seventh letter, and building 7, of course, the Twin Towers building 7. And this connection, I think, is pretty profound, and it makes perfect sense in context. But the main thing is that I was pointing out how Donald Trump existed in predictive programming in Trackdown from 1958. 1958, 1985, and I think even 1858 are the years highlighted in Back to the Future. A lot of time travel, a lot of Trump going back in predictive programming very far back. Many examples of Trump-like characters represented in movies like Gremlins 2, The New Batch, which Gremlins 2 definitely has a character based on Donald Trump. Moreover, here's a screen capture from Back to the Future where it's literally based on Donald Trump. The character Biff Tannen, time traveler, based on Donald Trump, becomes a kind of like a president. Now here you have on the screen Twin Pines Mall, 1:16 a.m. On the right it says Lone Pine Mall, 1:33 a.m. We went from the Twin Towers to the One Tower. 9/11 upside down. This movie is replete with 9/11 predictive programming. Quite a lot there. All of this does tie into Stanley Kubrick because, we talk about the different movies that reference 9/11 in advance, but it is specifically Stanley Kubrick's work I highlight because you can connect the dots, but it's pretty apparent that he is there at ground zero for directing the way that 9/11 was going to play out. It's not random. They write these scripts. I mean, how often do we see drills accompanying these various psychological operations? I believe on the day of 9/11, there were something like 88 drills that were going on concurrent with the event. I mean, this is typical. Do you recall the Christchurch shooting? During the Christchurch shooting, you had drills for bombs. You had drills for pit maneuvers where they pull someone out of a car, and that's exactly how they arrested the guy. In fact, if you look back at the Christchurch shooting, when they arrest the guy, they say, coincidentally, the police were doing drills that day, so they were already in their gear with their bulletproof vests, ready to pull someone out of a car, which they did. My point is, it is scripted. Nothing goes by that's not on the story. It's a movie. It's more movie than anything. It's not a false flag. It's not an attack. This is the reason why I don't call 9/11 a false flag. A false flag is an attack. A psyop is a hoax. 9/11 was not an attack. We were not under attack. Echo Charlie says Oppenheimer sounds boring unless there are Russian honeypots. The significance of Oppenheimer, which comes out next year, is that it's directed by Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan, of course, all the Batman films, but he is the Kubrick of our time. Stanley Kubrick's mantle would definitely go to Christopher Nolan. And you can find many examples of Christopher Nolan movies relating to current psyops. That's a reoccurring theme here. Christopher Nolan works with Nathan Crowley, related to Aleister Crowley. Not a coincidence there either. Another thing, Oppenheimer, I was thinking about that. The first nuke test was on 7/16/45. I mean, think about that. 7/16/45. 7/16 was the date that Apollo 11 launched from the Kennedy Space Center. 7/16 is a very significant date for the starting of the space age, but also the nuke age. All right, let's continue through some notes here. I have quite a lot. I don't spend a whole lot of time dealing with this George News thing on the live streams if I can avoid it, just because we've talked about it for several years. But for anybody who has any doubts, this is probably not a coincidence. I was calling the White House last week, the switchboard, and I was getting in touch with the communications agency and their travel agency to find out any evidence that they could give me that they were aware of George News. I wanted to find out, do they know that they got Q in the White House? That the biggest QAnon influencer, friends with Code Monkey Z, friends with the Watkins, is literally part of the White House communications agency and travel agency, that he's known to them. Anyhow, I got hung up on quite a few times, but that evening, George News posted this to his 250,000 subscribers. These are coins that he was given by the White House Communications Agency for his support. Just further evidence that the person who is not only a cyber stalker, cyber criminal, and identity thief, but someone who has been specifically targeted with charged with harassing this channel and suppressing this channel for years. Not a coincidence that he's in the White House, that he's very well connected, and he's everything I said that he was. And this is just further proof. He's a very protected individual. His YouTube channel was the one that blew up the story about David Hogg being a crisis actor, and YouTube's CEO came out and apologized. They said, this video should not have gone viral. We don't know how he did it, why it went viral. Well, we know now. This person had connections. Anyway, that would immediately show people, if that information came out, who he was. It would be a disaster for him. And I looked, and every story about the David Hogg crisis actor story going viral, every article, whether it's Snopes, New York Times, Forbes, they deleted this guy's name, his YouTube channel name. They try to hide it. But anyway, they can't. Just pointing it out. If you want to know more about it, go to marcusgoldfinch.icu. marcusgoldfinch.icu. I do believe that I have, well, I know, but I'm not going to tell you to believe me, but I do know, in fact, that the person behind the Q drops is doxxed and has been for years. And strangely, though, it hasn't really broken out yet, but it might. Mother Jones is looking into it. January 6th committee says former President Trump has refused to comply with the select committee subpoena requiring him to appear for a deposition. Now, there is this idea that he may be arrested, and it's all part of the bigger theater. The QAnoners are sharing this. I do keep up with the word on Q Street, and here's what I've come across. This is from Kelly Robert. I have confirmed this personally that the trees and shrubs have been removed from Mar-a-Lago. Trump is having all the palm trees cut down around Mar-a-Lago right now. Why? He claims, and this is of course from some guy named Juan, that when the FBI raid took place, people knew it was happening because of the police lights, but you couldn't see anything through the gates or the trees. Supposedly, they're having all of the palm trees removed, so when Trump is arrested, the entire world will be a witness to it. Linda Curtis says Q drops are slow drip. Well, they're really hoping for Trump to be arrested. That way it fulfills a prophecy and kicks off everything else. This is Jack Posobiec. He's an alt-right figure. He was the guy who live streamed in Comet Pizza and was talking about how crazy it was. And this is a few days before someone else came in and threatened to shoot the place if they didn't let the kids out of the basement. That was like 2016. Those kids would be teenagers now. If not eligible to vote, possibly. But here is Jack Posobiec on 11/8 at 5 p.m. The blood moon rises. The ultra mega blood moon. Next, he said, I've never seen anything like this. We are witnessing a generational realignment. And the next, it's keep stacking supplies. Like it went from hopium to we're all going to die. They saw a sign in the sky. They thought there was going to be a red wave, a red tsunami. And now it's get your storable food items. Everything's going to shut down. Keeps happening. Now, this is an interesting point. This is from Rocky Dennis. He calls this idea of hoping for some big thing. Like this guy, Sirius B, said, the announcement Trump's going to make is going to be massive. Unlike any other. It changes everything. Now, did everybody here watch Trump yesterday? Did anyone here get the idea that what he said changed anything? Was that massive? Was it a capital A announcement? I don't think so. I didn't see any dead Kennedys. I didn't see any aliens. But Rocky Dennis's response to this is pretty good. Just hope porn. A pressure valve for people angry at the system. Just going to slow any opposition to the narrative. There are no heroes. No one is coming to save anyone. Just a hope porn pressure valve. Interesting point. I think he might have something there. You know who talked about this was Aldous Huxley. He was talking about the function of rock concerts and big events as something of a steam valve. And I think maybe this person is onto something. Now, I'm sure this is just a coincidence. I was talking about world stage names. And we may go through the world stage names. In our Discord server, if you haven't joined, we have a number of threads. And the world stage names one is where we find people whose names tend to relate to their purpose. Like, for example, Goldman Sachs. Well, what does that make you think? Well, Goldman and Sachs, like stealing. Bernie Madoff, Bernie Madoff with a lot of money. Now we have, with FTX, Sam Bankman Fried. Fried the Bankman. Now if you look, Bernie Madoff and Sam Bankman Fried are basically the same template, as Human Vibration on Twitter would call them, templates. A lot of us have different ways of explaining things. I use the term meta script, world stage characters. We've come up with our own lexicon to explain what we're seeing. And the channel, the Twitter account, Human Vibration, has used templates to great effect to show how we are looking at a part, someone chosen to fit a part. Like, here's your script. You need some guy who dresses like, it's the devil in nerd's clothing, as Forbes called him. Make him look unassuming. He doesn't comb his hair. He's got stains on his shirt. He's got socks and Crocs. Like, he doesn't look like a billionaire living it up. He looks like some dude from his mom's basement. This is intentional, though. It's to be relatable, unassuming. I think it's just a costume. That's all it is. It's a costume. And yes, Sam Bankman and Bernie Madoff, and even the story itself may have some more parallels, which I'm sure are going to come out here in the coming days. Here's Trump. This is from that video I referenced by Shaking My Head Productions. He describes it as leading sheep to a slaughter, 9/11 and two twin pillars, or the twin pillars. Now, if you look, this is a pillow commercial. No, it's a mattress commercial. And I don't know what it is with mattresses and pillows and Trump and the pillow guy. There's something there. But on this pillow commercial, Trump is walking down a hallway talking to sheep. There are pillars on either side of him, and the sheep numbers are 9 and 11. This is obviously counting sheep before you go to sleep. But here you have it, Trump 9/11 leading sheep to the slaughter. You can't tell me this is an accident, that he's literally rogue, breaking the system, bucking the system, but he just happens to be in these very scripted bits of media magic. Media magic spelled with a K, because that's really what it is. Aleister Crowley spelled magic with a K for a very specific reason. It had to do with the numerology, but also to distinguish it from stage magic. Not that I think it's all that necessary. Stage magic, illusion, is what they use anyway. I think that the world stage is stage magic. It's about perception. It's about messing with your perceptions, sleight of mind, getting you to accept a false premise, misdirecting you, fooling you with twins. And that may be a thing with Trump. Got a post here from Conspiracy Charlatan. The plan is to make Trump seem like an underdog people's champion whose own party politicians backed away from him. And this is in response to Matt Gaetz not showing up and others. The public will rescue him from the treacherous political party and elect him by a landslide. That sounds legit. That is exactly what I think they will probably do. He's posturing as an outsider to be credible. That worked originally, and on his SNL skit, on his monologue, Dave Chappelle pointed this out, that he marketed himself as an insider who's going to serve the people. So he's an insider-outsider. A conspiracy charlatan goes on to say, they will then fake kill him to traumatize and enrage the MAGAs. Next, they will unleash Antifa and BLM upon the furious mourning MAGAs after a brutal trial goes foul. Okay, this is how martial law and World War III civil war will start. Sounds to me about appropriate. We're talking about Helter Skelter. We're talking about Turner Diaries. And I've made connections between Helter Skelter, Kanye West, the Turner Diaries by way of Django Unchained, and of course Turner Diaries, Timothy McVeigh. It's all about Helter Skelter, Civil War, World War III, on the lines of some kind of an event like this. Yep, Matt Pizzagate scrapped plans to attend Trump's 2024 announcement. He was such a QAnon hero. until his Venmo statement went public. If you didn't know, Venmo is like a social media where you share your purchases. Strangest thing, strange concept. If you don't make it private, by default it's public. So here he is ordering 17-year-old slices of pizza, and it shows up on his account. Anyway, he didn't attend. Oh, Matt Gaetz. There's a couple of things here I got to bring up too. Matt Gaetz is 5'7", but in pictures he's like 7'5". And this is consistent. He's taller than the Trumps in every single picture of the Don Trump Jr., Eric Trump. It's a consistent thing. And if you look, this cannot be a coincidence. I'm just going to grab at random the first picture I see. And I think he either hires a very short photographer or this is all instructed. But he's like, at no point do I want the camera at my eye level. I want people looking up at me. He's always head and shoulders above whoever he's around. And there are some instances where I can pretty much guarantee we are looking at some Photoshop manipulation. Now, I'm bringing this up now because it was pointed out to me, and it's going around Twitter, that, I mean, look at this. Marjorie Taylor Greene barely goes up to his shoulder. He's 5'6". There's something wrong with this photo, with all these photos. Now, just last night, a lot of images are circulating. Donald Trump, who is 6'3", is now shorter than 5'5". What's the name of his other daughter? You'll see some of the pictures, and I'll bring some up and catch up on some comments here. Okay, now the Turner Diaries thing. I wanted to get into that really quickly. I noticed that you had the Turning Point Conservative Political Action Committees. Turning Point. Turner Diaries came to life with the McCloskeys, which is an interesting story. If you haven't seen it, the cover of the Turner Diaries has a couple with their weapons drawn fighting the New World Order police. And on the basically 42nd anniversary of the Turner Diaries book was 2020. It came out in 78, and in 2020, during what would be the anniversary of this book, you had the McCloskeys coming out in their front lawn, pointing their weapons at BLM. Weirdly enough, the McCloskeys looked exactly like the cover of the Turner Diaries, like come to life. And not only that, but they're actually dressed like them. I mean, I'm like, okay, this has got to be some kind of staged event. And I think that is what we're looking at here. All right, let's continue. Celestial Wonder says soap boxes. I think that they use Photoshop now. Elon Musk firing Twitter employees after ordering their tweets and messages scoured for criticism. Yeah, there's your free speech advocate, your free speech absolutist. He called himself a free speech absolutist, but you can't criticize him. You can't criticize him. Very interesting. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a free speech issue. It's a private company, sure, but it's a principle thing for me. I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'm not going to advocate for burning your books. And he's just another book burner. And this doesn't surprise me. In fact, let me go ahead. This is actually probably prescient. Pope Elon. I dubbed him Pope Elon a few years ago. I wrote this article called Elon Musk, the Martian Pope. And I publish everything on as many platforms as I can so I can just readily search it. Now, this is interesting because I was doing some breakdown of this character. We've already described Musk as part Werner von Braun. He's part Iron Man, Tony Stark, and of course Willy Wonka. But there's more to him. And by the way, shout out to Pete Shea, who said that there's an interesting connection between Jules Verne, who first conceptualized a trip to the moon, and Werner von Braun, who actualized it. Jules Verne, Werner von Braun. Maybe there's something to it. We'll dig into that later. But now this is from February of 2018. I said Elon Musk, the Pope of Mars. Here's the plan the technocrats have in store for humanity. Now, what I'm going to bring up now has to do with Twitter, as you'll see. Wrath of Globe, world communism, space utopianism, leading into gulags full of potato farmers in vast underground plantations like Truman Show enclosures, but dressed up like Mars. They will not know themselves slaves, having been saved by having escaped to Mars. Mars is where millions will be relocated, probably somewhere in China. Musk will be the dictator on Mars, and its governmental structure will be based on Rome, which is what von Braun said. Of course, von Braun was a Nazi rocket scientist, Vatican agent. The Martian colonists will live in space communes, believing themselves to be humanity's survivors, and they will likely be told that Earth was destroyed by climate change. Musk will be seen as world savior, Mars's first pope, the vicar of God, just as the Earth's pope claims to be. Now, here's where I think we're getting to the present. Soon, climate change will be engineered and exaggerated in order to gain compliance for increased governmental controls over the private sector and the private individual. Now, they did this with COVID-19. They fast-tracked this. Eco-fascist measures will allow the government to act as savior. Musk can send the Ark to Mars and thus save humanity. But then here's where it gets into Twitter. A Christianity of Constantine, the chariot god. We're talking about Constantine here, and I'm thinking there might be a connection between Musk and this character of Constantine. Coins made by Constantine featured a cross but also had representations of Mars. While professing to be Christian, Constantine continued to believe in sun worship for the protection of crops and the healing of disease. This is pointed out in the Catholic Encyclopedia. Anyhow, my point being, there's this historical analog here of the Constantine turning tenant farmers, the coloni, into serfs. And I'm thinking that this space program is turning free people, property owners, into serfs. That's what you would be if you were on Mars. And then I'm looking at, of course, the bigger picture here is this. Constantine, with that you get the purification of the doctrines. You get rid of all of the Gnostics, the people who know too much. You silence them. You have your canonical texts. You have your Council of Nicaea. You get rid of everything that doesn't fit. And I think that censorship right now is how they're reconstituting a Bible. That they're creating the new Bible now. Like this is like a new council where they're deciding what books go in, what books go out, what is real news, what is fake news. But it's all about their ability to censor. And Musk is likely to play a big part in that, just given his role in Twitter, whether it's actual heavy-handed regulation and censorship, or he just helps destroy it from within, which is probably more likely if you look at the way that the mass media is looking at Twitter in the hands of Musk. I mean, you have to remember they actually fear memes. By the way, if you're on the YouTube channel with 911 subs, you'll note that the podcasts get auto-updated and uploaded onto that channel. I have some more deep fake stuff here. This has to do with deep fakery in the realm of politics. We always talk about...
Question, is Mike Pence a Christian?
We often talk about CGI Joe. Who's playing CGI Joe? Is there you got No Lobes Joe, Lobes Joe? What are we actually looking at? And what I have here is a video that goes through some of the work of Jonah Mendez, and I often talk about her work with the CIA, but specifically with hyper-realistic masks. Now, what's interesting is that for a couple of years, a lot of us had looked into this curious resemblance between Christian Bale and Mike Pence. Like, it's a serious thing. A lot of people have noticed this. And I found quite a few things that are just, it's very coincidental. Now, Christian Bale around the era of, I'd say, when American Psycho came out, does sound like Pence. But he doesn't so much today. But the interesting thing, too, is that Christian Bale played Vice, as in Vice President Dick Cheney in the movie Vice. He's already portrayed the role of a vice president. And if you haven't seen it, it looks like Dick Cheney. You would not know there's a Christian Bale in there. I'll play a short clip.
CEO of a large company. I have been Secretary of Defense. I have been Chief of Staff. The Vice Presidency is mostly a symbolic job.
Jesus. What's going on?
Now, another interesting thing here, this is again Christian Bale, who's suspected of really being behind a fake person, Mike Pence. Does Mike Pence exist as portrayed on TV? Or could he be as fake as this? Well, that's a fakeability question. Do you think it's within the realm of fakeability? But then let me add something else to the picture here. Dick Cheney and Christian Bale have the same birthday. Here we go. Dick Cheney is exactly 33 years older than Christian Bale. Of course, they made this perfect transformation. I haven't seen the movie, but I'm just pointing it out that it's a good example of how effective deep fake technology is. And it has zero to do with CGI or filters. It has nothing to do with this CGI deepfake that looks like Tom Cruise, and it's shocking people at how real it is. No, not really. The idea here is that we've been surrounded by deepfakes our entire lives. That's why this technology was classified until 2015. Jonah Mendez talks about this, why it was classified. And I noticed that about the time it was declassed, digital deepfakes started becoming a thing, which I think is a distraction. All right, let's see here. Going through some comments. The director's interest in making Bale look like Vice. Oh, here goes. Cheney's exactly 33 years older than the 44-year-old. They share a birthday. Bale tells me with fascination. Now, why is that fascinating? Well, that number is consistently associated with the PSYOP entertainment complex. But there's quite a lot to go off of. I have a lot of pictures, and I had noticed a lot with the expressions. We may go back and look into that. And now here's one, a tattoo. Some guy actually tattooed Elon Musk on his forehead, along with a rocket, which looks kind of dongy. But look, Elon Musk. That's some dedication there. In fact, today I got a prank call. Well, it wasn't a prank call. It was a sales call. This guy so I got a call from someone asking me if I needed a loan, if I had college loans. And I told him I was Elon Musk, that I didn't need his money. That's generally effective for getting off their calling lists. Anyway, yeah, this is a tattoo, Elon Musk, on the guy's forehead. I would get it backward so I could read it. All right, hey, check this out. This is Shaq has a theory about there being 2 moons. At this point, I think he's just clickbaiting it. Maybe they're asking him, hey, Shaq, can you say something to shake the world off of this Kyrie Irving and Kanye West thing? They try to use Shaq and Charles Barkley as like voices of reason, specifically whenever Kanye mentions the flat earth, because Shaq brings it up too. Not Kanye, whenever Kyrie. Whenever Kyrie brings up the flat earth topic, Shaq kind of brings it up too, but he brings it up in a way that kind of dumbs it down a few notches. And it is possible. I mean, take a listen.
I have a new theory. I have a new theory. There's more than one moon.
Oh, no.
Just let me tell you my theory. The other day I was riding past Auburn, as a matter of fact, and the moon was on the left. And I'm going straight, then making the turns, and about 20 minutes later, the moon was behind me.
That's because it was moving, fool.
Nah, there's more than one moon.
All right, there you have it. Multiple moon theory, Shaq. All right, here's a picture of someone who's 5'5" next to 6'3" Trump. Is she wearing 9-inch heels? How do you all explain this? This has people asking, are we looking at the real Trump? I mean, I've heard the theory there are twins. A lot of people have put that out there. But if they were twins, wouldn't they be the same height? Is Trump shrinking? Not sure if anyone has any explanation for this, but we have a open question there. But yeah, vote for Trump. He's going to stick a flag on Mars. Can't wait. I want to say thanks again, P Tripper 103 for the coffee. Definitely helped. I'm now mostly going to keep this channel afloat and expanding through art sales, which is completely separate from expecting to be monetized by spreading smell and disinformation, which just is not possible in today's world. Which, let's see. Oh, look, Chinese official squirming at question about rocket that disintegrated. I brought this up last week. There was a rocket part, a spent rocket that disintegrated and apparently dropped parts all over India. Now, I am suggesting, because this put it into the path of Starlink satellites and close to the ISS, I'm thinking that this space junk is not accidental, but that they are going to take down the ISS, likely with plausible deniability. China has a lot of explaining to do after one of its rockets broke apart after being launched into orbit. The person they put on the job to answer the questions ignored them. The American space rival experienced an embarrassing incident when the upper stage of the second successful Long March rocket broke apart, putting 50 pieces into orbit. And if you didn't know, the space environmentalists are telling us that our abuse of the environment, our consumption of fossil fuels, our destruction of the atmosphere is causing space junk to stay up there in space longer, which basically means like it's clogged. Like they need the space junk to fall down and burn up. But what's happening is it's just massing up, it's aggregating, like in the predictive programming animation Pixar, which is just predictive programming and communist indoctrination. The Earth is literally surrounded by a shell comprised of space junk. And that's going to happen if we don't change our ways. A New York Times reporter asked, did a Chinese rocket break apart in orbit over the weekend? What caused it to break apart? Does the debris pose any danger to the space station? According to our knowledge, what happened will not have an impact on the International Space Station, but I will refer you to the authorities for details. Again, China's attracted a lot of criticism for this over the last few years. And look, it's not a coincidence that in 2019, there was a drill called Fictional Event, where NASA worked with FEMA and ESA, both up on the ground and in space. And this fictional event was about an incoming asteroid and how we're going to react. Well, not a coincidence that a year from that drill, they had a piece of space junk nearly land, and it was going to hit New York, like a space 9/11. But it ended up going into the Pacific. However, it was a year to the date of the drill, the fictional event drill. And it seems like every year it happens again and again. Garrett Summers says, is Shaq 33 degrees? I heard that. I heard that he has a ring. On the inside it says, wow, which they say stands for worthy of worship. And people do worship these idols. And on that point, you have idolatry, worshiping idols, like a sculpture, a statue of the god, some kind of representation of the sun, different idols that you'll see around these various pagan traditions. But in the way they really do it, it's the priest and the priestess are living idols. As in, they call the master of the lodge the worshipful master. He is the sun, the junior warden's the moon. Just like the Pope is the sun. Just like in witchcraft, the high priestess is the moon, the priest is the sun. They do this thing they call it drawing down the moon, drawing down the sun. It's like possession. This is why Elon Musk was dressed the way he was on Halloween, not just cosplay. The costume from Abracadabra with the ram's head, red costume, it all correlated with his role as this Martian Pope, the Emperor of Mars, Aries. Color red, of course, and in the New Age, one of their main words that's on the cover of their Bible, Libra 418, the 418, the number references that word, abracadabra, where he got his suit. My point is, these elitists, these living idols, actually dress the part of the gods they represent that are worshipped by the people who are watching them. Like, you're not worshiping the celebrities, you're worshiping whatever entity rides them, possesses them, or that they're embodying, that they are assuming the form of, to use their way of describing it. All right, I'm going to continue going through my Twitter feed at Real Tim Osman. If you follow me there, I go through Twitter quite frequently, and I retweet anything of interest. Like here's one. Now we know reality is fluid right now, but now it's we're going through this process, apparently a big transition. Gaia is, and here you have Klaus Schwab speaking at G20, and he's talking about the structural re-engineering and how everything's going to look different. And I'm pretty sure what he means is that's when the reptoids are going to be seen as such.
Of course, if we look at all the challenges, we can speak about a multi-crisis, an economic, a political, a social, an ecological, an institutional crisis. But actually, what we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process.
All right, more utopianism. It's all talk, but there's a lot of apprehension and fear, the Great Reset, and to me it was a conspiracy theory. Well, to them it was until the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. But to me, the Great Reset is just another way of describing the New Age's great work, which is described in the book I just referenced, the book of the Thelemite cult, the one that Aleister Crowley supposedly channeled. But the Great Reset is what that book's about. They call it the Great Work. The Great Awakening on the right offers the same thing that the leftist Great Reset offers. One's a universal basic income, the other's Nasara Jasara, universal basic income. It's quite literally the same thing. You're being pitched on the same product, the same vision from the left and the right. They're both utopian visions that require destroying what is to bring forth what can be. That's the revolutionary thinking that they've encoded into this, the red and the blue. Of course, it's both. It's both. The Great Reset is the Great Awakening. Follow Trump, follow Klaus Schwab. It takes you to the same place, the Greta Reset. And it really is a Greta Reset because it's green. It's about the green world order, the sustainability as the ultimate value. The first caller brought up Kanye West, interesting character. Here he is from a few years ago, where he's talking about how he was mind controlled with drugs. And this is over there at TMZ, speaking to Harvey Levin.
I was drugged out. I was on opioids. 2 days after I got off of opioids, and I was addicted to opioids, 2 days I got off of opioids, I'm in the hospital, right? I'm taking two. Hey, everyone listen.
Now he gets the attention of everyone there at TMZ, and he just belts out this whole, not even conspiracy theory, just a description of his experience as someone it's the Kanye show. It's like the Truman Show. In a way, it seems like he has definitely got some kind of network of handlers.
And then driving to work on the opioids, right? Then my boy, and I'd always ask my boy, to hand me of his.
Anyway, I know everyone here has Kanye fatigue, and what this also shows you is that it's nothing new. It's just another rerun. Like he does this. Maybe it's coinciding with Trump and riling up the base. I don't know. It just seems like everything's a repeat right now. Very bad repeat. And I don't mean to be hypercritical, but I was listening to Trump's speech last night, and it reminded me of an apologetic ex trying to get his spouse to give it another go. Like, I know I didn't do it perfect. I know I promised a lot, but this time it'll work. But this time it didn't really seem like even he believed it. Maybe it's because it was late at night. I'm not sure. I didn't really feel it. Christine 122561 says, now he must announce his running mate. And posted a picture of JFK Jr. Well, sorry, he's a Democrat. He'll have to come back and register as a Republican, won't he? Garrett Summers says, a great year, the period of one complete cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic, or about 25,800 years. Age of Aquarius. Yeah, well, processing or the precession of the equinoxes, we move into the new age. And the astrological house is that we're moving into, the house of Aquarius, is described as this great work. And that America's secret destiny, according to Masonic historian Manly P. Hall, is to be a phoenix, to burn down. It's part of the process of transitioning into this one world synchronized state so we can enter into the new age together as one. And the idea of the house burning is very significant, as in all the symbolism we've seen in various movies, from Westworld to even Donde with Kanye West burning the house. Look, Kanye West is a part of this narrative. As I brought up earlier, at the Donde 2 event, on the return of Pluto, he burns the house. He sets himself on fire like a phoenix. Well, that symbolizes the astrological house of the previous age burning. Jeb Bush chimed in. Wow, what a low energy speech by the Donald. Of course, it's a jab, because Jeb Bush was called low energy by Trump, which pretty much ended Jeb and his attempt. Now, here's a mashup of Black Eye Club initiates. A few in here I didn't know were members. You have, the popes, obviously. Perez Hilton got in. And who's going to do the punching now that the Queen's dead? Out of all the people who are in this club, she's the only one I can imagine. Like, I'm pretty sure she's in it. She's connected to everyone here, but she doesn't have one, and I figured she must be the one doing the slugging. Anyway, I noticed, now I don't see Paul Pelosi on here yet, but I noticed that Kanye West is up here, next to Ben Affleck and Prince Philip, who died and was reincarnated as monkeypox. Probably wasn't the comeback he had hoped for. He wanted to do some real good for Gaia, but only hit a small segment of the population. A Reese Witherspoon, Black Eye Club, Sir Richard Branson, a Madonna, Black Eye Club. But yeah, Kanye West. And what does this tell you? He might already be in the club. Are we following like Albert Pike said, whenever the masses need a leader or a hero, we shall supply one. Movie coming to Netflix, if anyone wants to watch it and review it, Lost Vegas. This movie is called Lost Vegas, and it says, quote, it's 2029, a decade after COVID-19. The vaccine was tampered with, and people are turning into flesh-eating zombies when they meet an unvaccinated person. Now, isn't this dangerous misinformation? Will the WHO shoot this down? No, they won't. And you know what this tells you? That fiction is a viable way to get information through the filters of the big church. like Voltaire. That's what we have to do. We have to use fiction to get past these control freaks at the top of the media pyramid. You could make a movie about it. All right, let's see. I'm going through my comments here. We have people shouting outside of Trump Tower, Trump or death, stomping on a DeSantis flag.
Ron has gotten too big for his britches. He's out. He has plenty of time to gain wisdom.
Trump or death.
Let him stay in Florida for a while.
Remember when they did the Saddam Hussein statue came down?
That's right, yes.
Remember when the Saddam statue came?
Trump or death. You have some MAGAs a little, I guess, intimidated that DeSantis might pick up Trump's slack. And you know, there's a site called the Donald, where the Donald worshippers gather. Well, there's a new one called the Ronald, as in the Ronald win. And I think I have an account here. Yes, the Ronald. It's pretty cringe, and I'm almost sorry for bringing you here. But what they've done is they've made it basically a brunette Trump. It looks just like Trump. They're using all the same memes, even has the same Trump mouth. And I know DeSantis copies Trump's form and his gestures. They even have a meme generator. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to recreate Ron DeSantis like the Donald, but it's called the Ronald. You have fanboys getting in early. They want to ride that meme wave before it goes viral. All right, I want to say thanks to the callers. We'll likely be back early tomorrow morning, and we're going on a twice per day schedule. There's so much going on. The art is still being attacked. You know, art is under attack. And I got a question for any of you stop oil types. Here you have an attack on Gustav Klimt's Death and Life painting at the Leopold Museum in Vienna. Now here you have, of course, eco-fascists, eco-terrorists, environmentalists, a couple of Gretas throwing paint on canvases to protest oil and, of course, our reliance on fossil fuels.
Wir müssen endlich handeln. Der Planet wird kaputt. Stopp die fossile Zerstörung.
Now, my question is this. Why the need to destroy? Why must you destroy a painting to draw attention to the need to save the earth? Why can't you just gather together and paint a big, beautiful painting of the earth? Like, that's what I would do. If I was a Gaia worshiper, I would create paintings of Mother Earth, and I would show them to people, and I would say, hey, look at this. We need to save her. And what they're doing here is just completely the opposite. It's very destructive. And if you're not familiar with Stuart Brand and the whole Earth movement, or the whole Earth disk, back in the 60s, back before we had an idea of what the whole Earth looked like, there was an environmentalist named Stuart Brand who said, until we see the entire thing, we aren't going to recognize the need to save it. You know how everyone who goes up into space, they come back down and they say, wow, it was so fragile. Earth is dying. Captain Kirk went to space last year, William Shatner, and he said, I felt like I was at a wake for Mother Earth. He's up there in space, looking down, feeling like he's staring into a casket at a dead planet. Well, we needed that image to motivate us to become environmentalists. We needed an image of the earth. And I'm just saying, instead of destroying paintings that are priceless, just create some beautiful pictures of the earth and, raise some money, save the whales. And what they're doing is it's kind of too late, too little too late. They've already moved past it. No one, like even Greta, no one even cares about the whales or the earth anymore. They're moving on to space environmentalism. That's been the new push. In fact, Greta even said, I think she said death to the West. Greta said death to the West, Gaia Akbar. Let me see if I can find the exact quote here. But basically she says the West needs to be overthrown. I mean, how nice is that? That she's going to come into our country and say, you guys need to be overthrown. Greta Thunberg and her army of zealots, zealots, here we go. The Telegraph. It's time to transform the West's oppressive, racist, capitalist system. Now, here's another point too. You have racism, systemic racism, capitalism, you have pollution, and the virus. I often describe how we have this de facto world state church, your MSM, your media, your mind mediators and its priesthood. And they have replacements for all of the archaic myths and fears, like global warming is your modern flood myth. I described earlier how engrams in Scientology is a replacement for sin, and it's remediated the same way. Separate from the sinners, get saved, get purified in your baptism, take your wafers, whatever, but you separate, you disconnect. The churches of Scientology, the churches that preach sin, they're all assuming we're in a state of pandemic. Now we have a pandemic of sin, pandemic of engrams, pandemic of viruses. These are all constructs that are used in the same way as systems of control. But in addition to the concept of sin that they've given us with the virus or your carbon footprint, they also have a concept for evil and wickedness, which now are defined as systemic racism, and it's specific to the West because it's Western political and economic system of capitalism that is responsible for what? The death of George Floyd, he couldn't breathe because climate change. Spaceship Earth, the entire world cannot survive if the West continues to exist in the way that it does. You know, like the whole world has to be saved or we're all going to die. The whole world has to be cleared, has to be vaxxed. Well, the entire world needs to go green. Analogous concepts. It's a new world order religion. And Greta Thunberg's a fascinating character. I should do a character deconstruct. You have Saint Corona, who has the same hair, and that's the Catholic saint, the patroness of plagues, Saint Corona. Then you have Rapunzel in Disney, who looks exactly like Saint Corona, who lives on Corona Island, quarantined in a tower. That's Disney's Rapunzel. Then you have Disney Frozen Elsa based on Greta. You can connect these all together. Then you have the little Nazi girl with the braids hanging out with Hitler. You can see how it all fits together perfectly. Anyway, I appreciate her honesty. Instead of pretending to care about Gaia, it's like, nah, capitalism has to go. It was about Marx this whole time. I mean, you can't say the cultural Marxist critique of the left isn't based in fact. Like, they are selling you Marxism through cartoons. That's the very definition of cultural Marxism. It is not a conspiracy theory. I pointed this out the other day, and other environmentalists. And look, there's a certain point, they get so extreme. You know, they do tend to kind of
are doing this in solidarity with the Extinction Rebellion protests that are happening all across the country.
Anyway, they're with Extinction Rebellion. Suddenly they're against extinction, yet I thought their whole objective was somehow curbing man and getting rid of carbon footprints and decarbonizing. Like, either you want to decarbonize the world or you don't. Like, you should be pro-extinction. It's a pro-extinction movement, acting like they're trying to stop extinction. It doesn't quite add up. Anyway, thanks for joining. This is One-Eyed Jack in the Shells, Pope Elon.
I mean, we're all going to die someday. And if you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars? Okay. You know, if we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be kind of exciting. But so I think, given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll die on Mars.
By the way, OBS did shut down and turn back on. It interrupted. We had a gremlin. I think we solved it. But anyway, thanks for joining. It's going back to the 24/7.
Give us each our daily bread, and forgive us our sins. For we ourselves forgive everyone who is indebted to us. And lead us not into temptation.
And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
You see the gas.
Since 1972, destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew. Except for the twinsies, space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart.
All right, sorry to disappoint those of you who aren't in the know, but space is fake. That's Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. You can find Chief Crow on Spotify. I'll put a link below to this track. We're starting a little bit early. I sent out text notifications. I sent out email notifications. And, I probably should have put something in the title about Elon Musk and his Antichrist outfit, but we'll get into that right away. I talked about it on the day that he showed up in that costume. And it's one of those things where, is it just a costume? Sometimes it's only a costume, sometimes it's only a hand sign, and people do read into things. However, which we know of as Elon Musk, and we will talk about that. Let me go ahead and see who's here already in the chat. Like I said, I sent out notifications. I know it's early. It's prior to 8 o'clock a.m. Here in New Mexico. We're going to talk about disaster trolling. I guess we're all disaster trolls. Shout out to the BBC. Conspire racist disaster trolls, when we're really just fact checkers and media critics. Pope Elon's going to sell blue checks on Twitter for $8 a month. $8 a month, you can be a fully fledged, verified misinformationist. They started off $20. He said 20, and David Hogg threatened to leave. A few others did too. Even I've precisely. If they held me to it, I would have been silenced. I am a ban evader, and they say that on Twitter, ban evaders will be removed. But I'm thinking, if you pay them $8 a month, they're going to be less likely to ban you, because then you'll get a refund. And I think maybe that's what they're doing here. You're paying, it's nice kiosk here, nice business you got there. It'd be terrible if something would happen to it. Trump's not dead, despite the trending hashtag. Now, the Kanye West thing got rid of nukes. Everyone was afraid of nukes, Armageddon, Judgment Day, and then that's what was going to clear the decks. I was wondering. It's like we had 19 years of Islamic terrorism. That was cured by COVID. COVID Kardashians are inseparable. Kanye is the OJ of this generation. Now, I don't think that means he's going to go stabby on Pete Davidson, but if you think about it,